Welcome to part 19 of the entire plot of the Tandem Read from Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass. Guys, we have already finished Empire of Storms, and today we are finishing Tower of Dawn, and in doing so, we are finishing the entirety of the Tandem Read. I cannot even begin to express how crazy that is to me. I have been working strictly on the Tandem Read for the last 9 to 10 months, from opening the first page of the first book and starting to take notes up until filming the last video. So it's been a crazy full circle moment. I am sad to see it go, but I'm also ready to be done and start Kingdom of Ash, which, by the way, is coming very shortly after the Tandem Read. Have no fear, I will not be taking a break in between books this time. We're going to be starting with Tower of Dawn, chapter 58. This is going to start in Chaol and Yrene's POV, as they are still waiting to hear from Hafiza. They get that it's a big deal for her to hand over all of the things that she's been basically told to never share, ever. So they don't want to put a lot of pressure on her. However, they are in a rush to get this information to Aelin Galathynia, so there is a little bit of a rush. And this is literally the first chapter that we read after reading about Aelin getting taken by Maeve. So it actually kind of hits really, really hard because they're like, oh, we need to get this to Aelin ASAP. And it's like, ooh, right, her. Yeah, we might have a problem soon. So we learned that it's been about a day or two of them sitting around waiting for Nesserin to get back and for Hafiza to make up her mind when Chaol has officially told her the entire story of the series. And I'm going to use entire in parentheses. He actually only tells her everything from the Throne of Glass onward, okay? He doesn't tell her what happens in Assassin's Blade. That is an important detail for the end of this part. And it mostly serves as nostalgia for him telling his story. However, Yrene is very intrigued at the part of the story where Dorian kills his father at the top of the glass castle, right? And she's like, hold on, how did they get the Valg influence out of him enough for him to beg Dorian for mercy and try to, tell Dorian that he was actually good all this time and he was under the Valg influence. And he says that Aelin basically burned it out of him and it wasn't very pretty. And in this moment, Yrene decides that this actually kind of confirms the theory that she has that Valgs are infections. They are parasites, okay? So you can purify something with fire. So Yrene heals with her healing light, which, have you guys noticed at this point, she is light? That's her power. Light and fire are very, very similar things, okay? So she's been healing people with her healing light, right? And Aelin has been purifying things with fire. Think about it as when you get sick, right? And you get a fever, your body is turning up the heat to kill whatever it is that's making you sick. That's a really non-medical explanation, but you get the idea. So it seems like if Yrene is correct, that healing and fire are our two best options for getting rid of the Valg, even without word keys in the lock and banishing the Valg and all that. Yrene also believes that maybe what if she could heal the Valg out of someone, okay? So let's say someone's under the Valg influence, they have a ring or a collar or whatever. What if she, how Aelin was able to burn the Valg influence out of the king, what if she can heal the Valg influence out of someone? This leads to another long conversation where Chaol brings up Anthral's ring. Now remember, this is the ring that Maeve wanted really, really, really bad, and it protected you from Valg influence, right? Anthral's animal form was an owl, okay? This is the 7th time we've brought up owls in this series now? It was an owl. What is the symbol of the goddess of healing Silba? An owl. So they're making all these connections and they decide that they need to talk to Hafiza and give her more information, right? Because they're kind of refining their theory and they're like, maybe this will kind of push her in the right direction. So they decide that they're going to head to the Torah, go talk to Hafiza. However, in the hallway, they run into none other than Hussar, who just informs them that Aelin just got into a battle with Maeve. Tower of Dawn, chapter 59. Hussar does inform them that Aelin did win the battle. However, she makes them really, really work for that information because she's a literal jerk. But she eventually tells them that they won. She gives them some details as well as some stats and some interesting parts of the battle, especially the part where the White to Thorn ships actually turned on Maeve's own armada. And then Kale's like, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But then she says that a clan of Iron Teeth witches on wyverns fought in Aelin's name as well. And Kale, in this moment, mind you, he has not been around, okay, since like the end of Queen of Shadows with everyone else. So he's like, maybe this is Manon? Like, he doesn't know. He left before Manon even rescued Dorian in the attack of Adarlan. Like, he didn't even really know about that. So he just knows that the Valg version of Dorian and Manon talked to each other, and Manon owed Aelin a life debt, and she told him, like, which killer, the human inside of him still lives, you know, whatever that message was. I'm blanking on it for a second, but you know what I mean, that whole thing. So he's like, is this maybe Manon? Because, like, if it's Manon Blackbeak, like, that witch, like, she would be huge to have on our side in the war. Oddly enough, though, and the thing that bothers Hussar the most, and the thing that has Kale questioning things the most, is that there was no sign of fire magic during this battle. Of course, because we are doing the Tandem Read, hopefully, you know exactly why that is. Actually, wait, you read Tower of Dawn after Empire Storms. We know why then, because you're not reading Tower of Dawn before Empire Storms. That'd be crazy. You wouldn't do that, right? So yeah, we know this is because Aelin wasn't actually on the ship during the battle, and then she was on the beach. Hussar then informs them that shortly after battle, Aelin was joined by Prince Galen Ashriver and his entire armada, also the entire silent assassins of the Red Desert. And in this moment, Hussar says that it seems like a lot of people are buying what Aelin is selling. And Kale's like, and what is it that you think that Aelin is selling exactly? And Hussar says, well, I don't actually have to guess because Aelin wrote me a letter. And it was from one princess to another, promising a better world. Tower of Dawn, Chapter 60. This is in Yrene and Kale's POV as they are now running to the Tor because they finished their conversation with Hussar. And they decide that they need proof for the theory that they seek, or they need the armies of the South. And it seems like maybe Hussar might be kind of budging that direction. She's not really giving away how she feels, but it did kind of make them hopeful. Like maybe Aelin's letter did do something for her. And seeing all the other allies join Aelin, I'm sure hopefully does something for her as well, right? However, they need one or the other, either proof of their theory and those word mark books, or an army from the southern continent, and then they need to go north ASAP. So they get to the Tor, and then they get to Hafiza's office. However, Hafiza's not there, and they start asking around, and everyone's like, oh, she's been in her office all day, and they're like, no, we were literally just in her office, and she's not there. They go around the entirety of the Tor, and they, for the life of them, cannot find Hafiza. Sure enough, they walk past Yrene's room, and they see, nudged and nestled under the door, is that metal key that Hafiza was wearing around her neck, okay? It leads to the safe full of the wordmark books, okay? And it seems like it was kind of shoved there as a way to hide it. So they, in this moment, think that maybe Hafiza is in trouble. They run to the guards first and ask if anyone's seen her leave the Tor, and they said no, like she came to the Tor, you know, a while ago, and she just never left. It's been days. However, Yrene remembers that there are tunnels under the library of the Tor, okay? Because they were inspected after she was almost attacked in the library by what we assume is a Valg creature, right? So her thought is like, what other way would someone have been able to try to sneak Hafiza out of here other than like the secret tunnels? So they go straight to the library. They run into Nusha. And also, before we jump into this next part, I'll remind you, I've been using the word running a lot, okay? Kale is literally fully healed. He is running around. He is sprinting. He's got a sword in his hand. He is ready to fight. He is fully capable again of all the things he was before he shattered his spine. So it's kind of a cool moment. Anyways, so they see Nusha, and she leads them to the tunnels and agrees to send the guards in shortly after them, and then warns them. She says that it's been untouched for years. Be on your guard. Even we do not know what lies down there. And then Kale takes Yrene's hand, and they run through the tunnels to try to find and save Hafiza. So sorry about that, guys. I just got a life-changing email that I'm really excited about, and the vibes were high, okay? And there was no way I was going to sit down and film. So it's actually 2 days later. Where were we exactly? Right. All right, Tower of Dawn, Chapter 61. So we're still with Yrene and Kale as they are absolutely charging through these tunnels. And to calm her nerves, Urine is counting her steps, and she gets to step specifically 1003 in this moment. And really, that is not that important. The whole purpose of that is for Sarah J. Maas to, without telling you they've been walking a long time and that these tunnels go crazy deep, that's how she's telling you that. So it's a pretty artistic way as an author to like show you, not tell you. But they get to 1003 steps when they see 4 doors. Now, 3 of these doors have been sealed with what looks like stone. However, one of the doors is actually open and leads through another tunnel. Cale also notices at this point on the floor that there are 2 sets of tracks going into this door, so he figures this is where Hafisa and her abductor went. Also, to make things even scarier, the tunnel is actually lined with candles, as if someone is waiting for them at the end. It's clearly a trap, honestly, but Cale and Urine don't care. Like, at this point, they really just want to make sure that Hafisa is okay. They see a light in the distance. They walk towards, it's literally the light at the end of the tunnel, except for it is not actually a positive thing. They get to the light at the end of the tunnel, and they enter this giant room. Now, this is one of the largest rooms that Cale has ever seen. He describes it as being bigger than the throne room in the Glass Castle in Adderland, which is literally known for being gigantic. Okay, so think like giant room, okay? The wealth of an ancient empire filled the chamber. There's gold everywhere, there's statues everywhere, every possible treasure you can think of, absolutely everywhere. And then they notice a bunch of stone crypts. So not only is this a treasure trove, but it's also a tomb. Creepy. Urine let out a small sound at the sight of the gagged and bound healer on high, seated on a golden throne. But it was the woman standing beside the healer, a knife resting on her round belly that made Cale's blood go cold. Duva, the Kagan's now youngest daughter, smiled at them as they approached, and the expression was not human, it was Valg. Guys, we figured it out. Who the Valg spy has been, who's been hunting down Urine. It is none other than Duva, the pregnant potential heir. Which is crazy to me that literally no art exists for Duva. Like, I found art for literally every potential heir except for Duva. No clue why. It literally just does not exist. I also think it's hysterically and heavily ironic that I'm getting to this part in the series and I'm pregnant. And I never would have known a year and a half ago when I started the series that I would be pregnant when I got to this part of this book. But, you know, that's just kind of funny how things work out sometimes. Tower of Dawn, chapter 62. It occurs to Cale in this moment that it makes sense. Duva was not at the Oxar Oasis, so it makes sense that she is the one who raided his rooms while they were gone. Also, if you're like, wait, why wasn't she at the Oxara Oasis? She literally just said she couldn't join the party in the desert because she's pregnant. Like, the last place I'd want to be right now is a desert, so I totally get it. So, you know, like, reading that, it's like, yeah, totally. Like, who would want to be in a desert while they're pregnant? That sounds like the worst possible thing ever. Cale's thinking about all the implications of Duva being this Valg spy that they've been hunting down when Duva gives Cale a choice. He has to pick between himself, the healer on high Hafisa, or Urine. And in this moment, Duva loses her princess persona that she's had, and her Valg voice and Valg face and really Valg mannerisms, like everything about her is just purely Valg in this moment. Urine recognizes the voice as the same exact one that tried to attack her that night when she ran to Cale's rooms and made it just in time. So we're just confirming that this entire time, all of it has been Duva. Then, interesting, because Cale's like, why in the world do you think I'm going to pick between the 3 of us? Do you remember at the very beginning of this book, Cale presented a bunch of treasure chests from Aelin and Dorian to the Kagan as like a gift, right? The gift that the Kagan actually turned down and Cale ended up using to buy more Fire Lancers. Yeah, so those troves. Well, when the Kagan rejected their treasure chests full of treasure, he said, that's funny, you guys didn't send any treasure when Duva got married, but Parrington did. Right? That was so interesting. That was so weird, right? Well, apparently we find out in this moment that Parrington had put a Valg ring that he made sure was like insanely beautiful so that she would like see it and be like, yeah, that's mine, in the treasure chest that he sent to her as like a congratulations for getting married. And so she put it on, and that's when all this started. However, we do learn in this moment that Hussar actually almost tried to take the ring, but Duva was like, no, it's mine. And she put it on herself. Can you imagine if Hussar was the Valg? No, that would be insane. Hussar under the Valg influence would be like the most terrifying thing ever. Thankfully, Duva was a lot more tame, but because of her demeanor, it was a lot easier for her to kind of fly under the radar. Kale's also confused because he definitely was checking everyone's jewelry in his first couple days there, and so was Caution, and they didn't see any sort of like blackstone rings or blackstone jewelry. Well, it turns out the black stone is actually underneath in the metal of the ring, so that's why they never detected it. Duva then reveals that her littlest sister, Tumaloon, caught her being suspicious, and so Duva had to end her life. Then Yrene asks, honestly, a really smart question. I don't think this would have been the first thing on my mind, but I'm glad Yrene asked it because it actually does answer a very crucial question, which is why in the world would Erewhon target the southern continent, let alone a potential empress or a potential heir to the Kagan in the southern continent? To which Duva answers with the craziest thing, which actually explains so much about this book, is that Erewhon wanted this Valg to look for Yrene, specifically the healer who was gifted by Silba herself. Why do you think Maeve has hoarded her healers, never allowing them to leave her patrolled borders? She knew we would return. She wanted to be ready to protect herself. Her prized favorites, those Dornael healers, her secret army. How clever those Fae were who escaped her clutches after the last war. They all ran away here, and when they bred the magic into the land, into its people, encouraged the right powers to rise up to ensure this land would always be strong and defended, and then they vanished, taking their treasures and histories beneath the earth, ensuring they were forgotten below while their garden was planted above to give those Maeve did not consider important a small chance should Erewhon return. And thus the Tor grew, and his dark majesty indeed rose again, and fell, then slept, and even he forgot what someone with the right gifts might do. But then he awoke once more, and he remembered the healers, so he made sure to purge the gifted ones from the northern lands. But it seemed a little healer slipped the butcher's block and made it all the way to the city with an empire to guard her. So Erewhon did not send this Valg spy here because he predicted that Aelin would send someone to the southern continent to try to get allies. No, he specifically sent someone to hunt down and find Yrene. Now there's some crazy implications to this. That also goes to show, like, we've learned since Sorsha that healers specifically have been hunted down in the northern continent, worse than it seems like any other magical creature. That's why the entirety of Fenhara was just gone, right? And we always just kind of assumed that, a lot of healers gathered there. It's safe to assume that most everyone from Fenhara had magic. The king was just trying to get rid of magic, blah, 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 right? But no, it was specifically a target on healers because Erewhon is very specifically threatened by healers. However, due to Yrene's mother's sacrifice, she made it all the way to the southern continent, started studying at the Tor, where she especially started tapping into her special gifts that she has received from Silva herself, which means that she is especially gifted and especially strong, right? Has defied all the odds and now is protected by the Tor because of her status. So that is why Erewhon had to get a potential heir, literally like potentially one of the most powerful people on the continent, to be his spy and assassin. That's crazy. After this explanation, Kale tries to keep Duva talking to buy some more time before the guards come, because remember, before they went down to the tunnels, they told Nusha to send for the guards. However, Duva's like, hey, I know you're trying to buy time, but don't worry, I have a plan. I'm gonna kill you, Kale, and then I'm going to tell the guards that it was an act of self-defense because you found all the treasure down here and you were trying to bring all the treasure back to Aelin and Dorian, and me and Yrene and Hafiza tried to stop you. And first of all, the Kagan's going to believe it because I'm his daughter and, I'm a potential heir, so everyone's going to take my word for it. And second of all, they know that you guys are technically desperate in this war. So it all tracks. So this is actually a really good plan, except for how is she going to get Yrene to go along with all of this, you might ask? Great question. Urine is going to be putting on a Valg ring and is going to be Erewhon's personal healer. Otherwise, Duva is going to kill Hafiza. At this point, Kale has nothing to say. Urine has nothing to say. They honestly are like, wow, like she's really thought this through. They have nothing to combat that with. They're like, her plan might actually work. So they're realizing they're royally screwed. And Duva can see that they realize they have lost. And so she starts walking down the stairs from where she is with Hafiza to go put a ring on Urine, when Hafiza, right as Duva's crossing in front of her, where she's sitting like bound to this throne, right? Apparently it's a lightweight throne. Kale's speculation here is that it's a wooden chair that's just been covered in gold, right? So it's not that heavy. Hafiza launches her body, golden throne and all, on top of Duva, and they like clatter down the stairs together. Duva, of course, starts bleeding black because she's Valg. Urine wants to run to Hafiza to make sure that she's safe and okay and make sure she doesn't need healing, when Kale is just yelling at Urine to run because he needs to, handle Duva. However, Urine doesn't even want to leave Duva because she's pregnant. Okay, so there's a baby involved here, and Duva just fell down the stairs. And so in this moment, Urine realizes if that baby is human and not like some sort of weird Valg creature, like they cannot let Duva die because they can't let that baby die, right? So Urine in this moment knows the baby can't die. She goes to Hafiza to heal Hafiza, and Kale starts fighting with Duva. However, Urine can tell that Kale is also on the same track of like, there's a baby, so like we need to find a way to maybe like knock her out, to disable her, to get rid of her weapon. However, her weapon is like her Valg magic, so kind of they're like, okay, we need to find a way to knock her unconscious. Like they're trying to figure out what they can do to keep this baby alive. So Urine is trying to heal Hafiza while she's watching Duva throw all this like Valg shadow magic at Kale, right? And Kale just needs something to guard himself, because remember, he's not trying to attack and hurt her with his sword. He's trying to just protect himself so that he can find a way to knock her unconscious or disable her, right? Literally, he just grabs the first thing that he sees. It just happens to be a mirror. What have we learned about mirrors in this series? Okay, there's a special kind of magic mirror, and we're in a room, okay, that belonged to the Fae, okay? That was kind of a part of Duva's explanation, is like the Fae hid their stuff underground so that people would forget about it, right? Yeah, so this is like all of the Fae's old stuff. So naturally, the mirror that he grabbed just happened to be a witch mirror, and it happened to be one of those mirrors that Manon told us about that amplifies magic and then using the reflection like throws it back out, right? So he holds up this mirror to protect himself, and then Duva's magic hits it, it amplifies and then shoots back at her. So Duva is down, clearly. She was not going to survive some crazy magic that was meant to hurt Kale that has now been amplified by a witch mirror, okay? Duva hits the ground, and she does not move. She does not look like she's breathing. Kale and Urine just stop. They're like, that was the last thing we wanted to do. And Urine realizes if Duva is dead, they will only have a very short period of time to save the baby. So Urine runs up to Duva's body. However, Duva was pretending to be dead. Of course she was. And she turns around and she goes to shoot her Valg magic at Urine when Urine gets close. However, Kale, of course, will never let anything happen to Urine. And he kind of was afraid that Duva might have been pretending. Like he wasn't convinced that she was dead, let's say. So he was close by and he jumps in front of Urine and takes the full brunt of the impact of this Valg magic that was meant to hurt Urine directly into his spine. Tower of Dawn, chapter 63, Kale feels his spine shatter, and it's worse than what happened at the glass castle. Urine tries to grab Kale's sword and like fight with Duva to try to get Duva to stop, because she can like sense that Kale's spine is just shattering beyond anything worse than she's had to heal. But of course it doesn't go well. Urine is not meant to yield a blade. Okay, she's a healer. She took a do no harm vow. That's actually going to be really important here in a second. So she does not know how to operate a sword. So she fails, and then Duva just starts chasing Urine around this little treasure trove. So Kale's lying on the ground, like slowly dying, basically. And Urine and Duva are playing the most frightening game of tag you've ever heard of. Duva, however, does catch Urine, but catches her from behind. And Urine, years and years ago, back when she was just a little tavern maid in Assassin's Blade came across a girl assassin who taught her how to defend herself from someone who would grab her from behind. And so Yrene performs the exact like self-defense move that Aelin taught her in Assassin's Blade. So full circle moment. Okay, very, very cool. So she has Duva pinned down now. She's on top of her. And she has the opportunity to make the killing blow, okay? She has access to a weapon. She has this moment where she can end Duva's life and then go save Chaol. However, she has vowed to never take a life. However, Chaol is slowly dying. So she either breaks her vow and saves Chaol's life, or she keeps her vow and Chaol dies. However, Yrene, and this is like actually a really long part of the book, like it's really drawn out, but Yrene is like really struggling to make this decision, and she's like remembering how her mother had to make that decision for her, and she's just thinking about what in the world is she going to do, and then Hafisa comes up to Duva and goes like blows in her face, right? And Hafisa, I guess this is like, she's like an anesthesiologist, right? In the magic healing world, because it just knocks her out. And apparently this magic that she has is so strong that it keeps the person knocked out until she is ready to wake them up. So in my opinion, that sounds like she's a magical anesthesiologist. Yrene then dives to Chaol because she needs to do everything she can to save his life, right? And then she notices that there are two additional people that have kind of joined the party. It is none other than Nesserin and Sartok. Now, it's explained later how they got there, but I'll just explain it now because it's really not that big of a deal. One of Sartok's spies informed them where Yrene and Chaol went, and it was to the Tor, and so they went to the Tor, and then they went down to the library, and then the magical bast cats, remember we talked about them like at the very, very beginning of this book when we first got to the southern continent, these magic bast cats led Sartok and Nesserin to the tunnels. They, at this point, kind of figured maybe help would be needed because they're like, these tunnels look pretty creepy and sketchy, and there's no other reason why Chaol and Yrene would go down here. So they asked multiple other healers to join them. And they got here before the guards, although the guards come like almost instantly behind them. So it's like Sartok and Nesserin, a whole bunch of healers, like a crazy ton of them, and then the guards that Nusha called for, all like just kind of, you know, start filing in at this point. However, Nesserin and Sartok made it there first. So they're here when Yrene dives for Chaol's body, and then she tries to use her healing magic, but Chaol's injuries are far too extensive, and he is without a doubt dying. However, Hafisa speaks up in this moment, but it is not with her voice, okay? It is with the voice of the goddess of healing, Silba, okay? The damage is too great. There must be a cost if it is to be repaired. There must be a cost. Yrene in this moment says, I don't care what the cost is. I will pay it, okay? Then Silba says, because remember, Erewhon has revealed through the spy that has infected Duva that she was specifically chosen by Silba and gifted by Silba. So she says, I chose well, you shall pay the debt, Yrene Towers, and I hope you shall see it for what it truly is. And then Yrene is like given this special ability, and she goes to heal Chaol again. At this point, also, all of the healers that had followed Nesserin and Sartok down here, they have finally gotten here, and then they all just kind of like join hands and like touch Yrene, and so they kind of create like this big like chain link of healers, and they all channel their healing magic like through to Yrene, so that there's like a power of a bunch of healers just healing Chaol right now. And then Chaol wakes up very much alive. Okay, so very exciting. Whatever it is, it works. Another interesting thing is it says where that scar had once sliced down his cheek, only unmarred skin remained. So they accidentally like overhealed him in a way. Literally the scar that Aelin gave him at the end of Crown of Midnight after the assassination of Nehemia, it's literally gone. Chapter 64. So what is the cost, you might ask? That's a great question. Yrene and Chaol are now eternally connected. There must be a balance, right? And the best way to describe it is Yrene has a magic battery, right? Just like Aelin, just like Rowan, just like Dorian, because healing is a magical power, right? So she has this battery. And now Chaol has a battery, except his battery is the same exact one as Yrene's. Now, he doesn't have healing magic per se, but let's say Yrene is at 100%. You know, she has not used her healing ability. She is fully charged and ready to go. Chaol has 100% walking ability. Now let's say Urine uses a crazy ton of her magic and gets to 50%, Kale will be at 50%, and he will lose his ability to walk. So basically, the more that Urine uses her magic, the less Kale will have the ability to walk. Yeah, that's really the best way to explain it, in my opinion, in a way that it's like very understandable. But they're basically like forever linked and bonded together in this way. There is also another condition, or like a little asterisk next to this lovely balance. Because their lives are now bonded together in this way, whenever one of them dies, they both die. So Urine instantly has a lot of guilt about binding Kale to her in this way, but girl, you just saved his life. He would have been dead, okay? So enough of that. But something really sweet that Kale says in this moment that I feel like is finally so revealing about where Kale is mentally, emotionally, and dare I say even physically. He says, using the chair is not a punishment. It is not a prison. It never was. And I am as much of a man in that chair or with that cane as I am standing on my feet. And then he tells her that she has truly healed him in every way that does matter. It's very sweet, very emotional. I absolutely love it. And then in this moment, obviously, because Kale is like making a declaration of love basically to Urine in front of this very large audience, Nesserin is here. So he kind of looks to Nesserin, and they kind of have this unspoken conversation, if you will, between each other, where they're like, you know what, like, you are with the right person and I am happy for you. And she's not just like saying that to Kale, like, you and Urine are great for each other, but even Kale is now seeing her and Sartok together, and he can tell that like she's glowing right now. She is so happy, and they just look good together, and they have like definite chemistry, and he's just looking at her being like, I'm happy for you, and I feel like we both ended up with the right people. So they haven't had like the conversation, but like they basically have had the conversation in this moment. Now let's flash forward as Sartok brings his coma-induced and Valg-infected sister Duva to the throne room to present her to his father and all the other potential heirs, and tells them literally everything, okay? Everything. The Kagan is devastated, confused, angry. He's got a lot of feelings, but all he can think about right now is Duva. And so he looks to Urine and he asks her what she can do. Chapter 65. It is a long and very ugly process, but Urine does in fact heal the Valg infection out of Duva. So this also goes to confirm her theory of what she can do with her Silba gifted healing magic against Valg. However, she will tell us something later that she did learn when she was fighting the Valg and Duva. She did talk to this Valg, and she confronted it about being a Valg prince, and this Valg corrects her and says it's actually a Valg princess. Not the biggest, craziest thing, but it does, give us a little more information and something we didn't know before. Urine gives Duva a moment to catch her breath, and then she checks for the baby and confirms that not only is the baby human, thank goodness, but the baby is actually fully healthy and was not affected by Duva being infected by the Valg, nor her going through such a horrible and painful healing process. Duva, at this point, confirms everything that Sartok and Kale were saying, because her oldest brother, Argun, was still doubting. Like, I don't know if he thought they were putting on a performance or what, but Argun was still skeptical, okay? Now he is not, okay? Because Duva just confirmed that everything they said is true. The Great Kagan then turns to Urine and says anything she desires, it's her. Like, name it. Any favor you want, it's yours. Not only for healing Duva, but for bringing the truth of what happened to his youngest daughter to light. Urine then asks for her favor. I think you already know what it is, but we're going to find out what it is in just a chapter. We're going to flash forward actually to Kale, Nesserin, Urine, and Sartok as they're all catching up, and Urine asks them how exactly they knew that they were in the tour and like to find the Baskats and go down there with them. And this is where we learn that Kaja, okay, Kale's servant in his rooms that we've known as a spy, but we just didn't know who she was a spy for. She was a spy for Sartok, so that is why Sartok knew exactly where Kale and Urine were. So we're sharing absolutely everything we've learned while we were away, starting with Nesserin and Sartok and everything they learned about the Valg history and Maeve, and then Urine and Kale share everything that's happened on their end as well as their theory, to which Nesserin responds, it also explains why Aelin reported an owl at Maeve's side when they first met. Guys, I told you, okay? I told you back in Era Fire that this was important. There's a reason I chose this specific art, okay? And pointed out to you that there's an owl in it, okay? It's so important. Owls. Owls everywhere. Owls are so important. Maeve has an owl. Yrene says the owl must be the fae form of a healer. Some healers of hers that she keeps close as a bodyguard. Interesting. And then they start talking about how they are all gonna head north together to meet Aelin and Terrasen, and yes, all 4 of them, because Sartok is going to be joining them, as well as 1,000 of his Ruck Riders. Hussar then bursts into the room that the 4 of them are in, and she informs them that she will also be joining them going north to Terrasen. Duva is the best of us, the best of me, so I will go with you with whatever ships I can bring so that my sister will never again look over her shoulders in fear. Chapter 66, this is Nesserin's POV as she is absolutely exhausted. This is after the 4 of them have been talking and Hussar just told them that she will be joining them. And she's not really had a minute to process or rest because it's literally been go, go, go nonstop, like since she went to the Dalgul Fells, right? So she decided that she's gonna go to the stables to get some quiet time when a messenger runs up to her and delivers her a message that actually got there 2 weeks ago, but she wasn't there 2 weeks ago, she just got back. And it is from her uncle. She immediately grabs her ruck and starts heading for her uncle's. And you're like, wait, Kadara? No, not Kadara. Her ruck, okay? Nesserin is officially a ruck rider. Do you remember when she saw that ruck whose old rider had died in war? And Bort and Sartok were like, oh, maybe you should approach the ruck and ask it if you can be its new rider. And she was like, no, that would be cruel. I don't want to do that. Well, after they were at the Council of the Clans and asked them to make a decision about joining them, and now we learned that 1,000 of them have decided to join, she then decided to go to that ruck, and that is the ruck that she flew back on. So she did, in fact, approach the ruck, asked to be its rider, and the ruck agreed, and now she's officially its rider. And what is his name? His name is Salki. So she rides Salki all the way to her aunt and uncle's, but she is not greeted by her uncle. She is also not greeted by her aunt. She is greeted by her father and her sister's kids. Now, this is absolutely huge because she has not, she left them in Adderlin, right? At the end of Queen of Shadows. And then there was the attack from the witches and all of that, and she hadn't heard from them, and then she did hear that they were fine, but they didn't know where they were. They're officially here in the southern continent. This is her first time seeing her family since everything has gone down. It is a very sweet, very amazing reunion. She is so relieved to see them, and it's really just a sweet and tender moment. They talk for hours before Nesserin decides that she needs to head back to the Kagan's home. After all, she did not tell anyone where she was going. However, when she gets out to the front yard, Sartok is landing and dismounting Kadara. He heard about her family's arrival and wanted to come welcome them to the continent personally, which is really, really cute and sweet. And no doubt he also wanted to meet her father, just a thought. So Sartok greets the family, says hello to them, welcomes them to the continent, and then asks Nesserin if he can have a private word with her. Basically, he told his father that him and 1,000 Ruck Riders were going to fight in the war, and when his father asked why, Sartok says not only is it the right thing to do, but the woman that he loves is going into battle, and he will not let her go into battle alone. His father came back at him saying that a potential heir should marry someone of status and of power, and although she is Neith's arrow, she has a skill. She's not anyone of status, okay? She's a little nothing born in the northern continent. To which Sartok says, if being a potential heir means that I can't be with Nesserin, then I don't want to be a potential heir. And he goes to storm out when he has stopped, okay? And maybe this is due to some respect from his father for this decision, but his father in that moment officially declares him to be the official heir of the Kagan. So there are no longer potential heirs. Argun does not stand a chance. It will not be Duva. It will not be Hussar. It was never going to be Caution. Sartok is officially the next Kagan. Nesserin immediately goes to bow because that is what culture does dictate needs to happen. However, he will not let her bow to him because he will fly with her to the war and then she will come back with him and they will live happily in the southern continent together. Now, it's not outright. It sounds like an unofficial proposal of marriage to me. Maybe he's just talking about dating, but let's be so for real. He's a royal. They're basically betrothed at this point. I like to believe that this is a marriage proposal. And then they kiss, and it's very sweet. It's their first kiss. It's a very special moment, which I guess means Nesserin's answer is yes. Chapter 67, this is in Urine's POV. She's saying goodbye to Caution, who's actually finally satisfied in just being her friend, so it's about time. Then we get a fun tidbit here, actually, that after Zartok was officially declared heir, he made a statement that ran down along the lines of he did not plan to hunt down or kill any of his siblings when he became the Kagan. Which is honestly amazing. He's the first Kagan in generations to make this decision, and Urine can tell that all the siblings are relieved. They're happier, they get along better. I mean, if you think about it, throughout this whole series, they've all really been in competition with each other, and now there's no competition. They're ready to live their respective lives. I mean, they're still royals technically, so they're gonna be fine. Urine finishes saying goodbye to Caution, and then she hops on the ship with Kale, and then says goodbye to the southern continent as they sail north. Tower of Dawn, chapter 68. This is in Kale's POV. 2 weeks later, they are still on a ship sailing north to Terrasen, and we learn that before Urine and Kale hopped on the ship, there was actually a couple-day delay to them starting their journey sailing north, because Urine and Kale got married in the tour. Now, jump scare. You're like, whoa, what happened? Do you remember, like, chapters and chapters ago, we talked about how Kale offered Urine a position by his side so that when she came to the northern continent, they could, you know, continue to stay close to each other? Yeah, the position he offered her was the position Lady Westfall. So she's officially Lady Westfall. Also, this is just such a funny stinking tidbit, but we learned that Kale basically stole the chair from his room, the couch that him and Urine did majority of the healing on, because he sees it as like a souvenir of them meeting and slowly falling in love and him healing, and it serves as a reminder for him. So they literally, like, on the ship also have the couch that they've been healing on, like, this whole book. I just think that's funny, but also really cute. And then as a wedding gift, Hussar gave them the horses that they rode through the desert. So they have a bunch of fun little souvenirs and, like, fun reminders of their relationship together. So Kale and Urine are talking on the ship when Urine mentions the mystery girl from the tavern again, being like, wow, I would not be here. Like, I'm so surprised, like, this full circle moment, and it would not have happened without this mystery girl from the tavern all those years ago. And this time, for the first time, because she's told this story to Kale multiple times, right? But this is the first time she actually shows him the note. So she takes it out of her locket to show it to Kale, and he reads it. But not just the words. He reads the handwriting, okay? And he knows this handwriting. He recognizes it as belonging to Aelin, and everything pieces together that this happened when Aelin was on her way to the Red Desert to the Silent Assassin's Keep, right? And little did Aelin know that this little act of kindness not only would result in someone as powerful as Urine, a girl directly blessed by Silba, who had the power to actually fight off the Valg. And not only would this girl later come to help Aelin fight this war, but she would bring along 300 healers to fight off the Valg with her. And not only would she do that, but she would get one favor from the Great Kagan of the southern continent, and she would ask for his armies to aid in the war. So not only are they coming with 1,000 ruck riders, Hussar's entire armada, and 300 healers, but they are coming with the Kagan's foot soldiers. And Kale in this moment decides to tell Urine the story of Aelin Galathinius, starting with the story of Assassin's Blade, and basically telling her that that mystery girl all those years ago was actually none other than the queen that you're about to meet, Aelin Galathinius. Now we have one more chapter, and it is Tower of Dawn, chapter Fireheart, because Aelin has officially finished her voyage in her iron coffin along the Nightingale. And her iron coffin opens, and she's greeted by Cairn, who's ready to start getting acquainted. Ugh, what a gut-wrenching way to end such a good book. Sarah J. Maas, what are you doing to me? That is officially the end of not only part 19 of the Tandem Read and the end of Tower of Dawn, but it is actually the end of the entire Tandem Read. I'm going to release parts 10 through 19 as one giant chunk for people who prefer to watch these in one giant piece. I'm also going to cut up all 19 parts so that there's an Empire of Storms only video and there is a Tower of Dawn only video. Then we will officially move on to Kingdom of Ash and finally tackled the last book in the Throne of Glass series. I'm feeling especially nostalgic right now. We have been working on the series for about a year and a half now. I had no idea what the series would become when I started it all those months ago, but I'm so glad it's become what it is. So thank you so much for joining me on this very, very long journey. I've loved every second of it. If you are not caught up already, you absolutely need to. This is the best place to do it. And of course, you should subscribe so you get notified whenever I post a brand new entire plot episode.